And since we are remote, I think we need to do a roll call vote. Anderson, I am present.
Booth present.
Morano present.
Rainey present.
Rankin present.
Well, all right, guys, here we are. So I wanted to call this meeting because I thought it was really pertinent to update you all on our last building committee meeting, which was a pivotal one as it was the meeting that we saw our first round of estimates. And given that some people are on vacation next week, I thought it was important that we meet. So here we are today. I know. Thank you all for making this turnaround time. It's kind of quick, throwing together a meeting in under a week's time that we weren't planning. So I appreciate everybody for their flexibility. What I thought I would do in this meeting was sort of a few things. Number one, because I don't know what everyone's status is and how closely they've been able to watch recordings of our meetings and whatnot. I felt that the first thing that I would do was kind of give us a summary and status of what happened at our June 30th meeting. And then from there, I thought it might make sense for our group to have some discussion about what the next steps are going to have to be for the building committee, so that Court and I have an idea about where you all, what your perspectives are, where you foresee some things going, so that we can, sort of best represent you all. So I will start out with a quick summary. Court and Lori, I'll ask you for at certain times to make sure that I've gotten everything accurate. And we'll go from there. So here's the summary. So to the surprise of nobody, I guess, the bidding estimates for the construction of the middle school came back above budget. The delta is about 7% of the construction budget, which is about $5 million. So I often say, so don't get confused, even though the total project cost of the building is 100 million, only 80% is construction costs. So when I say 7% over budget, I'm talking about that, roughly $80 million. The other 20 million are things like soft costs, architectural fees, that kind of thing. So I think some of the things that are most important to note, these were all things that were discussed in our meeting of the building committee. The construction documents are not complete yet. Drafting full construction documents is like a very arduous, detailed process that takes months to finish. So given that they're not complete, changes can still be made to these documents. So, and changes really can be made up until 60% completion without a lot of consequence. And I guess what I mean by consequence is that changes can be made that won't incur like massive additional costs in the form of significant fees incurred by the design firm, things like that. The point, however, at which construction documents reach 60% complete, that's when we get into this area where it's not recommended to change things. They become difficult to change and they become costly to change, if that makes sense. So given that, and the fact that the market today is among the most volatile markets we've ever seen, we thought that the process was that if changes or cuts were made to the building, then they might not be needed if the market stabilizes between now and when we get actual bids. There was discussion, for example, about the fact, I think it was specifically, if I'm remembering correctly, about like the astronomical rate at which roofing materials are escalating, to the point where everyone kind of knows that level of escalation is probably not sustainable much longer. So like maybe we could expect to see some stabilization there, for example. But the net of this is we have more time. We have some time to be flexible between now and October to talk about changes that could be made to this building that would potentially yield some cost savings. Court, Lori, how am I doing so far? Do you feel like that's very accurate?
Just one question.
Sure.
You said October. Is October the 60% complete date? Is that why October?
So it's two things. That's going to be part of like my next section. It's two things. One, yes, that is around the time at which the design firms think they're going to be about 60% complete. And secondly, that dovetails directly with when we'll be getting a second round of estimates. Everyone on board, everyone understand, everyone good? Okay. So sort of part two of the recap. So given that the construction documents are not complete, they weren't complete at the June, I don't know what it was, 30th meeting, the CMSBC voted to wait. That the vote to wait was one of several options. I'll take you guys through those in a minute. And I think the idea behind waiting was that another round of estimates that would commence, like Carrie just asked, in late September, early October, will receive new estimates that simply, even just by nature of the fact that they're that much closer to the time that we would actually build this building, and that we would have the opportunity, or the estimators more specifically would have the opportunity to see more actual bids, that the estimates will be more accurate at that time. And again, that dovetails with when the documents approach that 60% completion. Again, I think my personal feeling is the building committee, we voted to sort of wait and see. I think that was what the option was called, in hopes that the delta, that $5 million delta might close, if not in its entirety, at least somewhat, that we'd see some trends in market stabilization, and that at that time, the estimators would be able to reference more actual bids to determine whether how accurate these estimates are.
Alexa,
So yeah, Court?
when I made the motion to that effect, it was not anticipating that costs would necessarily stabilize, rather that at the 60%, we'd know a lot more.
Right.
And my understanding from the paid professionals among us was that to value manage twice was not to our advantage. So we should be mindful of the 5.3 million, but and understand what that implications might be,
Sure.
but not solve it, quote unquote, at this point.
Right. So in light of that, we were, just so everyone's clear, we were given at our project management firm presented us with several different options that we were asked to consider. One was the action that we took, which was wait until October. The second option was reduce the scope of the project to align with the estimate. And again, that's that $5 million number. The third option was reduce the scope to align with the budget plus the bidding contingency. That delta is like 3 million. The fourth option was return to the voters to request more money to keep the project scope intact. And then the fifth option was pause for some indeterminate amount of time. I personally think this means I don't think we're talking months when we talk about pause for an indeterminate amount of time, because what we would hope in doing the indeterminate amount of time pause was we'd be looking for sort of long-term market shifts. Those were the 5 options that we considered. Like Court and I said, we elected to do option 1. So what I want to do next as an exercise for all of us is sort of talk about what we think the kind of pros and cons of each of these options might be. Again, so that Court and I can, go back and represent you guys and sort of what you think about this project. Of course, we don't, as a body, get to vote on any of these things. That will be under the purview of the building committee. But I do think it's important that Court and I, when we go to those meetings, have an understanding of your perspective. So before I do that, I did want to give the superintendent sort of a quick opportunity to sort of weigh in on her perspective and sort of what she sees, and then we can move into sort of our exercise, if you will. Lori, do you have anything that you think is sort of pertinent to add or?
Sure. Do you want to take Carrie's question first or?
Oh, sorry.
No,
Yeah.
it's fine.
I have a couple questions, but I'm happy to wait. Lori, you might answer some of my questions if you want to go first.
Okay. I thought it might be valuable, especially since the whole committee, sitting committee now is not necessarily engaged in the process leading up to the design of the school that we're currently in. We spend almost 2 years developing an ed plan to guide the committee and the project itself. I would admit that the concepts in the ed plan materialized prior to the actual document, but that doesn't mean the concepts weren't really rich and strong and fully vetted. So the building itself is designed on a very strong team concept. And by team, our definition of team in this new middle school is curricular aspects from 4 different content teachers: English, math, science, and social studies, who collaborate together to work with the same group of kids as they travel. They mix up during the day, but it's essentially the same section of that grade level that stays within that 4-person team. And we call that on team. And we do that now. We've built up the ability to put teachers on what we call clean teams. A clean team means you're only on one team. Prior to this past school year, we've had a history of working towards these teams where teachers are dedicated to only one team at each grade level. We are at 3 teams per grade level right now. And that's what the building is designed for. If we don't have adequate staff or space, then we have to start splitting teachers across multiple teams, which definitely detracts and negates some of the impact of the team because they're not as available to kids, to their colleagues, and to do all the integration and collaboration about kids and content that the whole purpose is meant to have. We did build out the teams staffing wise over the course of the previous few budgets and are at clean teams at all 3 grade levels now. The trouble we have right now is that the team really is meant to be proximate to each other. Sanborn and Peabody in no way allow that to happen. We're actually organized by department right now. So kids in the course of a day, rather than traveling, close by to the teacher within the pod, they're traveling sometimes the entire length of Sanborn all the way out to the mods to get to their next content teacher. So the ability for cross-curricular and interrelated content development, sharing of information across teachers, professional learning community types of approaches is very minimal. We're just not able to maximize that. I would say back in the fall of 2018, the teachers, when they first met with the design team, that was their first and biggest request, was that we clean and really commit to this team model and make it the integral heart of our middle school. We believe in this so much. It was part of the reconfiguration of the 6th grade when we moved them to Peabody solely so that we could onboard them better. We have now, as you all know, have 9th grade academy, which is based on teams at the 9th grade. So this is a core value for us, that the teams is a really rich way to serve the needs of kids across content, academics, social, emotional, and teachers in a secondary environment are able to have a whole picture view of a child because they will meet as a team and discuss kids. They'll meet as a department and discuss content. And then within the team atmosphere, they'll be able to do both. And curriculum integration becomes much more automatic and natural. And what we're lacking right now is the space to foster that to what the vision really is. So the layouts you've seen of the building are 3 floors with 3 teams per floor. Each team has the 4 proximate classrooms with a common area in the middle called the team common. And that's intentional and by design meant for overflow of project and group work. We visited a number of middle schools and really enjoyed the fact that it became a really active environment where kids could rehearse presentations, build and collaborate with each other, do all that higher level thinking and deeper learning that we're aiming for as well, because they're up and moving and active and engaged with each other. And that, really fosters that visionary mindset of, what we need to be doing for kids in the environments that we're preparing them for. They need to be creative and collaborative and be able to really work with content, not just know the content. So the replication of that across the 3 floors is really integral to this ed plan. In addition to that, we're looking for space where they can find connections with each other, have a little more independence, and that's more the common side of the building. The heart we wanted of the school to be was the library, and that's right there at the main entrance. Really inspired by the high school library and what the Learning Commons has done for the high school, trying to make that an engaging, interactive space for kids. We had a designated maker space, which is a space where kids can build projects and really creatively put together outcomes. We have combined that now without having that designated space, which we gave up in the process. We're working towards what the library can offer for that, and we are counting on those team commons to allow for the same. Other common spaces on the other side of the building, addition to the library, is a really engaging cafeteria lunchroom setting, which has availability and accessibility for kids of all different types. It's no more just rows of, tables that are, rows of tables and lots of kids all in one table, but lots of options for kids, booth type of seating, smaller table options, really trying to be sure our eating environment is accessible for all. If you've seen the diagrams and design work, those are really well starting to come to fruition. In addition to that, we've got a auditorium, which, as you know, now seats over 400. That'll allow us, in the course of the work, we realized in the ed plan that we do a lot of performance-based activities, not just the musical, which we're all excited about and proud of, but also across English, for example, doing a lot of dramatic, theater types of enactments of the literature they're reading. And so that became another pretty important element of the ed plan, is having that performance space. The gym, we all know there's been a lot of discussion of the gym, so we're excited that that's now available to adequately support our gym classes during the day and much better support our afternoon rich extracurriculars. And there is a separate gym space next door, what we're calling an alternate space. We had an OT-PT space for special needs and an alternate gym space, which would be multi-purpose in nature. We've combined those settings. So we're going to try to multi-facet that room so that when there isn't an occupational or physical therapy need, we have other options for kids that might include aerobic experiences or fitness activities or things not necessarily as group oriented that might need a full-size gymnasium. So we're trying to make sure we're maximizing those. Finally, on the common side is the music department and their spaces. They have 2 spaces plus use of the auditorium. We had started with more, the gift of the positive and the con of Sanborn and Peters. We actually have a lot of space. So we're down tens of thousands of square feet from what we have in those 2 schools combined. So we've gone from each music educator having their own performance or rehearsal space now to 2. So they're going to have to share and use the auditorium, but we feel good about where we landed there. The art classrooms, we have art classrooms available that have some nice outdoor activities and experiences. We consolidated art classrooms from 3 to 2. So they're also going to have to share, but the schedule works. And then finally is world language. I had a lot of debate over how best to serve world language. So world language is in a section of the school on the 2nd floor, all proximate to each other because they are sharing classrooms, and we'll have to, really make that a language rich environment based on the pod of classrooms they have together, and kids will come to them. So the building as designed, plus the outdoor spaces, has really hit all the checkbox after a lot of discussion and visioning and some compromise to try to come up with a really exciting environment that's going to move our learning forward and yet still meet all the fiscal hopes of the community. And that is how we got to a successful town meeting. So that's how we got here and what the building layout and space represents educationally. So thanks for giving me that opportunity, just because Tracy and Carrie weren't part of all that. So nice to get us on the same page.
And then I guess before we do our the exercise that I'm hoping to get us all involved with, I was wondering, does anyone else have any questions? Carrie, Court, Tracy, Cynthia. Carrie.
I have a couple questions. Thanks, Lori and Alexa. That was really helpful. I know you guys are much deeper into the weeds in court. I know you've spent a lot of time on this too. So thanks to everyone. I I guess one of my questions is, when you had the 5 options that were presented to the building committee, can you talk a little bit about the consensus on the committee? Did everybody agree to wait until October? Was it split? Like, I'm just wondering where the committee fell on that choice.
Yeah, I would say, there was certainly discussion. We did not, however, systematically go through each option and vote on which we thought was the best. I do think that given that option 1, I think did feel, at least I thought, Court, Lori, you can weigh in as well, did feel like the most sensible at the time. And so we didn't truly really debate many of the others certainly not in a meaningful kind of way. It seemed like the default, we did have discussion about the need to, potentially look at the value engineering log again. That certainly was a big part of the discussion. But again, we defaulted to option 1, I think, pretty quickly.
And then,
Alexa, we did vote, just.
Oh,
to
no, I know, we did
clarify.
vote, but we didn't systematically go through each option and vote on them.
you just voted on option.
Yeah. It, again, because it's sort of, it felt sort of naturally falling into place that we would pursue option 1. And then to Lori's point, we did take a vote on that, which I think it wasn't quite unanimous, but it was
Okay.
overwhelming.
Okay, and then my follow-up question to that was there discussion around, preparing for the other options? So like thinking about what it would look like if we had to cut 3 million, 5 million, or return to the voters, what those 3 things might look like?
We haven't. I expect that will be central to our next meeting. Is
The one tomorrow, is that?
No, it's a week, it's 2
Okay.
weeks from today.
Okay.
Carrie, the way I characterized it at the meeting was, if we can take, quote unquote, 1 bite at the apple in October with better information.
Yep.
It might be a wiser course than taking 2 bites of the apple, 1 now and 1 with more information later. But in regard to those 5 choices, I will share with you, as one member of the building committee, it always gives me pause when somebody else gives a committee a menu of 5 options, as if it's not going to be 4, not going to be 6, and we're not going to generate the options. They're going to be given to us, and we have to select from them. I think a place where the building committee can gain more credibility in the future is if it really debates what it believes the options are, rather than to have them kind of cooked in advance, which it appeared to me that way. I'm not saying they were wise or unwise, but I would think the town would benefit from more participation by the members of that committee on choices in front of us, because we've got a lot of hard choices yet to encounter, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I think, I think it's worth noting that both of the chairs of the building committee, I think, were heavily involved in those discussions with the paid professionals to come up with those options. So there was certainly some guidance from the committee on that. Did you have another question, Carrie?
I had another one, but go ahead, Cynthia.
So I just have a question regarding the building committee motion. That's really what we're discussing today, correct? Feedback on that?
No, well, I wanted to take us through a more sort of dynamic conversation about the different options and sort of what the consensus of our committee was. We haven't done that. This is just yet. That's sort of the next piece, but
they would read
sort of entertaining questions. You can ask whatever you wish.
No. I personally don't like stepping on another committee's toes. So it sounds like the building committee took a vote, right?
Yeah, sure.
So
I think, no, I'm not, and I'm not suggesting that we're going to step on anyone's toes. I think what we're trying to do is generate some consensus about our feelings as a school committee, so that Court and I, in our capacities as your representatives, are taking into account your feedback.
okay.
That's what I'm trying to breed consensus on, not suggesting that we influence the building committee as a in a collective kind of way, even though I think some other town groups do that. I'm not suggesting we necessarily do that today. That was one part of my thought process. I think it's more incumbent upon us to create consensus and sort of a direction from our perspective, so to ensure that Court and I really are representing you all, because that's sort of what we are there to do.
Right, I'm just, in order to have that, I'm trying to better understand what the process is going to be for the building committee going forward. So according to the presentation, the 60% is between September 30th and October 14th. So this
Yep.
looks like it's more like an October decision rather than September, or would that, I'm a little confused about this.
So I don't think we have a meeting put on the schedule yet. I don't think the building committee has drawn out their meetings that far. I imagine one will be within that time frame,
Okay.
at which point we'll do the same thing that we just did in our June 30th meeting, which would be to look at the newly revised estimates and move forward from there.
Okay, good, thank you.
Sure. Anyone else have any questions? Tracy, Carrie, you had one more maybe?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Tracy, you good? You still with us? Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm good for now. Yep, I just have to go off video just because I'm struggling with my internet.
Okay. So I think, again, what I want to make sure, it's important to me that I have a perspective, and I think, this is something we have to debate out in public and in our open meeting. I have perspective as to what each of you guys are feeling about this project, again, so that me and Court are best representing this committee. So I thought what we could do, and maybe Tracy, you're having problems, but could you share your screen, or maybe Carrie could share her screen so we could I'm envisioning if we were at Ripley, I'd be doing this on a whiteboard, but we can't really do that, and sort of talk about what our feelings are about how to ensure that we still, how you want Court and I to sort of represent you all, and what as Court and I are going to be the ones representing this committee at the building committee, what are your hopes and expectations for how we do that vis-a-vis this problem that we're in? And one of the ways I thought that we could do that was to sort of go through the different options. What would the pros and cons be, for example, to looking at further cuts in the value engineering log? What would the pros and cons be to returning to the community to determine whether they are willing to cut the scope of the project, or whether they're looking to allocate more money to preserve it, those kinds of things. So, and I thought literally we could just sort of bounce ideas off each other, pros and cons, if that's the right sort of terminology, kind of get them on paper and go from there. Tracy, do you have the ability to share your screen and get like a literal Word document, or maybe Carrie?
I think I can. I'm off video, so it's actually probably easier for me because then I won't be distracted.
Sure. Okay.
Let me see if I can pull up a thing.
Because I do want, one of the things that I think is important is that we all make sure that our perspectives are being heard and whatnot, since, again, we're the ones as I think, I don't know how it was articulated, but we're the ones accepting this building, and then we have to steward it and ensure that it is meeting all of the demands of our ed plan and best servicing our students. So Trace, are you having trouble? Carrie, could you maybe do it? Are you on a computer? I can do it. I just don't want to be distracted.
Alexa,
Sure.
question, because we may encounter it in the future, so perhaps we should address it here. If we do the exercise as you framed it, can we avoid the notion that we are second guessing an action of another committee, or is that in fact our intent?
No, I think again,
Do
what
you understand what I mean? How it could be perceived that way? That
no,
was,
no, no, sure. But I think we're talking about vote, option one, which is the wait and see. I don't think we'll debate that. That sort of to me is something in the past. I'm more talking about, what are the pros and cons of the things that eventually the committee will need to vote on. And again, I'm not meaning necessarily, I see, Dawn, I see Charlie, I see Matt on this. I don't mean to influence them directly, but I do think it is important that you and I specifically as representatives of this committee understand the will of this committee moving forward and ensuring that we deliver that message to the larger committee. So it's essentially, I think we're looking for feedback, the feedback really, I guess, Court, is for you and me from our own members to ensure that, to ensure that we understand what our committee is looking for. Trace, I see your hand fluttering.
Yeah, I guess, you know, I was watching from the background before I joined the school committee, and obviously I was contributing as an individual in the community about my feelings on certain things. And I do think in a school committee, we should philosophically figure out where we're at, because I do think that it's important to go back to the community with all this. This is a building, 50-year building. And it's not a decision that I, certainly take lightly. And I know the building committee doesn't take that lightly either. And we're in a kind of stress right now. So I think that, as a school committee, what I would like to understand better is what do we hope for this 50 years and I do think it is an exercise we should go to, like, where are we at? Do we think that, are we looking first? I mean, I know how to look at, but that should be guiding the design decisions, in my opinion. Oh, you can't hear me, can you?
I can.
Yeah, I just,
Video.
does that work, Alexa? Is this what you?
Well, no, I was more thinking, so what I want to do, and also it's a summer meeting. I don't want us to be here for hours and hours. What I was more thinking about was the building committee eventually, I think, is going to be sort of confronted with two options that Court and I are going to have to participate in debating, synthesizing, moving forward. And those two options are essentially, are we gonna value engineer this building and honor the budget and alter the scope? Or I think there's really three options. Or are we going to honor the scope and alter the budget? Or even, this wasn't a third option, but some sort of third combination, which is a mixture of the two. So what I wanted to do was really condense some discussion about those, well, really should be, 2 to 3 ideas about how the building committee might confront these problems, so that we understand, Court and I, what your perspectives are, and so that we can accurately represent them at the committee level at the building. And so what I was thinking was sort of going through those 3 options, giving no more than 15 minutes to each. And the 5 of us really just kind of talking it out and getting sort of why would this be a good thing? What would be the drawbacks? What would be, the pros and cons? So I think, we can start with option 2, which is to value engineer the building further, to, again, honor the budget and alter the scope. I think that's option 1. And, maybe, I can even just do something as simple as putting a 15-minute timer on my phone, and we can sort of round robin and sort of talk about our ideas and what our concerns are with that, and what are, or why we think that's a great idea.
Oh,
Can we start with that?
I was not prepared to have this conversation.
Can you just,
So I didn't know we were going to do this exercise. Did you tell us that we were going to do this exercise?
No, it was just something I sort of came up with, and
I'm just going to abstain from all, because I have to get a lot more information to even just, these are pretty important discussions.
I'm not sure I'm not sure there is more information to be had.
So I would need to know what the total tax impact would be, how we would go about this. Would we need to go back to town meeting?
Yeah, well, I think those are the things that, we need to sort of talk about. And if you, and that's fine, you don't have to participate, but I do think it's,
I don't think I can really weigh in, right? I
that's
think
okay.
these are all, again, important building committee discussions. And we
Right,
can,
but Court and I are your representatives, so it is incumbent on
the-
us to,
all citizens, not just the school committee. You're appointed by us to represent.
the school, I mean, in my interpretation is to represent the school committee. And I think it's important. I wouldn't, if there was broad consensus that, this committee felt that we should value engineer this building, I would feel very uncomfortable sort of going rogue and saying, I disagree. So I think it's important for Court and I to understand what the will of this committee is so that we can best represent that
Well,
in
it's such an
our
important
meetings.
topic. I don't think I personally have enough time to look at all the data and information.
Okay, well, I think we're gonna move forward. If that's okay, you don't have to participate in this exercise, but I think these are just ideas. These are just things that we're gonna talk about. I don't think they have to be any more than that. So Carrie, do you want to put the shared screen back and we can sort of talk about I guess
but
option
think
two.
Cynthia
sort of-
actually raised a really important question, which is what is the role of the representatives?
Could I speak to that?
Yeah, I wish you would.
When we were appointed, the expectation was that we would represent the school committee. And I believe as school committee members, we are trying to represent all the constituents we serve. So by nature of, by its very nature, that's difficult because we have competing objectives. We don't have enough resources for everything that we say we want and say we need. That's a perennial problem. What is most certainly in our domain is the ed plan. That's our job. Mm-hmm. And, Lori was accurate that the team knew what we wanted prior to the publication of the ed plan, and nothing in the ed plan doesn't reflect our wants and needs. And I'm not sure we want to reopen the ed plan. I think that still is the best statement we have as to what we want, what we need, and how we might achieve it. But now that ed plan meets the cold reality that it meets in every city and town, which is the school capital plan has to encounter one, other community needs, two, a town's capacity to support those needs, and third, factors in the environment, i.e. the marketplace, that might be new and difficult. Alexa, I'll answer your question this way and say, my objective is to hew as closely as possible to the ed plan within the larger objective of fiscal stability for this town. Because at the end of the day, I want every constituent, not just the subset that we serve today directly, to be very happy that we've made a huge investment in Concord's future. And I don't want to, I don't know if I'd voice it the same way Cynthia did, but I'm not comfortable really kind of intervening at this stage with the building committee. I think the building committee knows where we stand. I think we produced a very fine ed plan. Took a while, but we did it. And they've operated in good faith from that ed plan. So we all know what's going to happen in October. That is, we're going to get more dependable numbers, and we're going to wrestle with the fact that we have a issue that's large or small, and we're going to look to the building committee, and the building committee is going to look to the town to affect any recommendation they have for solution. I'm not surprised that we're 5 million over. We've been saying at almost every meeting, pre-Ukraine, pre-inflation crisis, that the market is very, very volatile. It wasn't long ago that we cut $18 million or thereabouts from the high school. And yet nobody's saying that we've threatened student achievement or student well-being. You know, that's part of the process, is to do the best we can with the resources we have. So to summarize, I would recommend we hew to the ed plan as closely as we can. I would recommend that we be mindful of larger community needs so that we garner support, not just short-term, but long-term for education in this town. And I think you and I will put our best foot forward and do that on the building committee.
Okay, so going back to so, you know, that's a really, I think, well-articulated sentiment. I still think my hope in having the exercise laid out as I, you know, had hoped to do it, was to encourage everyone to participate in a more collaborative and open environment. So let's go back to talking about the two issues that the things that the eventual question that the school building committee is going to have to answer, which is, you know, how are we, you know, what are we going to have to, we're going to have to answer, as Court said, these hard questions of, you know, are we going to honor the scope and look for more money, or honor the budget and alter the scope? And I think I would like to hear people's perspectives, everyone's perspectives on that. And I mean, I guess I can, you know, do the Socratic method and call on you all. But I was hoping maybe to make it a little bit more interactive. Carrie?
I'm not on the building committee. I've been following it for some time, both as Tracy said, as a private citizen and now as a school committee member. I think it's a really important project, and one that will be really part of our community for many years, servicing our kids and not just our kids, but our families and our town, the people who live in our town. And so I think it's really important that we get it right. And I have every faith in the building committee that everyone is doing all the right things, asking all the right questions to get there. And I think this is an important part of that process. And I think Court 100% agree with you that we should hew to the ed plan while being mindful of the fiscal impact. And I think but in that there still lies a choice. And the choice, what, like, it seems like there is a choice in that we can't have it all. So what do we do? Do we make further cuts, or do we go back there? But what I would like, I personally would be very comfortable with cuts to like materials that were less expensive, or like ways in which, you know, decrease the labor costs. You know, I know there've been some creative ways about moving dirt on site instead of moving it off site, like things like that, like creative ways of saving money. I think absolutely we should be looking for things like that, as I'm sure everybody is or already has. I'm not in the weeds as everyone else, as the committee is. So 100% we should be looking for ways to cut and to be creative about how we use the money. But I also want to be mindful of the education plan that everyone has worked so hard. Our superintendent, her entire team, this committee prior to me, to be thoughtful about devising, so that we have a 21st century building and a 21st century, you know, education for our kids. So I think we actually do have to, I think it sounds to me like there is going to be a choice on whether we can achieve both. And so my question would be, you know, what are the cuts? What does that look like? And to Cynthia's point, what are the tax implications? What are the tax dollars? What would it look like? Because I do think as a school committee member, we also have an obligation to be mindful of the fiscal impact. So, I mean, to Cynthia's point, I don't have all of the information, but I feel very strongly that, you know, Alexa and Court, as you're representing this committee, that you know, that we don't make choices to like cut things that are going to hurt the ed plan and impact the space as it's been designed and as it's been voted on. So I think where I would stand is before we make any, you know, substantive cuts, that we should bring it back to the town for their voice. As a community member, before I was on the school committee, that's all that I wanted was a say. And I don't think that anything has changed from the community's perspective. Yeah, so that's my perspective.
Tracy, I see your hand waving.
Yeah. So I watched
Tracy, will you turn off your video?
last
and hope that
building
your
meeting this week.
audio-
Oh, sorry. Okay, is that better?
It's might be.
Okay, let's try. And if it's stop me and I'll move again. I did watch the last building committee meeting and there was some discussion about the materials and the types of materials that they're using. And, you know, we're not using top of the line materials. There's not brick in the building. So I do think that some of those cuts that you're talking about, Carrie, like to some of, you know, the finishes, those have already been made. So we're still left with this decision as to, are we going to get more money or are we going to cut some things? But to me, it's just like very simple. I do think, you know, as Court said, like the ed plan is the key to everything because that really is district needs and what the educational is going to look like in the future. And I do think, you know, I love the concept of clean teams. I mean, I was very vocal at an auditorium. I wanted a bigger auditorium, you know, and I realized you can't have it all. I mean, I sit here as a school committee member and I struggle a little bit with that because I'm like, okay, you know, I advocate strongly for a larger auditorium for performance space, but I also know that we can't always have it all. So I do think that, you know, going back to the people, see what people are interested in, because I do believe that people, you know, there's this concept of, well, people voted on a budget for a building. I think that there are people voted on yes to a middle school. There are some people in the town that voted on this is the budget we want. And I do think that the townspeople at some point are going to have their say in this. You know, and I would just say, like, from my perspective, I would like to advocate on the educational needs of the kids, because I do think that is our duty and responsibility as a committee. And see for now, because I'm not really hugely interested in making huge cuts to every little thing in the building, because as I was looking, you know, there's of where we can have a makerspace, but I think a makerspace is important, but they're being creative about where to have
Yeah. I don't know if
space
you're,
is now a combined space. So can you not hear me?
you're fine. I can hear you.
We have made some of those accommodations, and I just worry about, you know, going down and really value engineering this and to cut little things here and there. So I guess, you know, as a school committee member, I would say, if, from my opinion, you know, maybe wait and see a little bit till the next building committee rolls out and see what the will of that committee is. But at some point, we are going to have the will of what our committee
Right.
says should be.
I think you're done, Trace. You cut out for me every once in a while, but I think what is important to note based on Carrie and Tracy's questions, I don't, at least from the perspectives of the professionals, the delta of 5 million is significant enough that there is not an expectation that talking about, you know, swapping out premium materials for more basic materials, that type of thing. I don't think we're going to close that delta with those types of swap outs for two reasons. One, to Tracy's point, we're already using, I think, mostly basic materials in this building. And secondly, there's not enough wiggle room there that you can collapse that delta. So it was, I believe, stated in our meeting on June 30th that we will be having to look at, if our objective is to collapse that delta of 5 million. It's in its entirety. The building committee is going to have to be confronted with changing this, making alterations to the scope of the project. Do you feel, Lori and Court, that that was an accurate summary of what was said?
It is what was said as far as I recall.
So unfortunately, it's not saying, oh, we'd love to have marble floors, but now we need linoleum. Those aren't the discussions that we'd be having, is my understanding.
Nor should the school committee.
I'm
Not
sorry.
us, Not us, the building committee.
No. Yeah, I'm saying that when I say we, I mean me as a representative, the building committee. I don't think those are the types of conversations that are going to be there. I think they're larger in their considerations.
I think I just clarify that, Alexa. I think there will be looks. I think the design team's looking at all of those options right now to see what they can bring us,
Yep.
because any savings is savings, right? Can we get 5 million out of it is the question.
Right. And that was what my understanding was. The answer to that will likely be no. So even if you do those kinds of cuts, which to your point, I guess, Lori, will look at, there will still have to be larger considerations to be made.
My understanding is that where we on the building committee are not discussing cuts at this point.
Correct.
We're simply mindful of the most current budget estimates at the 30% stage. And we've chosen to wrestle with this in earnest at the 60%. And if I'm correct, we were led to believe that this week we would see a list of potential items for value management consideration.
Yes.
With the idea that there may be some kind of budget challenge, be it 5.3 or something else, when we know more at the 60% stage. So if my understanding is correct, we will have consideration, discussion, debate about that list, but not such that it's going to drive a decision now. Rather, it's just to inform us so that we don't have, for lack of a better term, a fire drill on our hands in October.
Right. But I also think too, I think the kind of like elephant in the room is, I think, the likelihood that the revised estimates come in and collapse the entirety of that delta is probably low. I think it would be naive to think that the estimates are going to come in at, 5 million less. I think, I'm not, certainly not an economist. And secondarily, if that's the case, in October, we would have a really challenging time, if that's the first time we talk about value engineering.
But that
So
was my point. That was my
Right.
point. The point is we're getting the list this week so that
Right.
we have a couple of months to do our due diligence on the
Sure.
potentials that might, operative word might, be under discussion
Right.
at the 60% stage.
But similarly too, in the same way that we are preparing to talk about honoring the budget and altering the scope with a value engineering discussion, what I wonder too is, given that we have a special town meeting in October, if it ended up, because to your point, Cor, at the building committee level, we have not voted on anything other than this pursuing the option one, which is the wait and see option. Should there be equivalent work being done? Like so what I'm saying is if the building committee is discussing potential value engineering that would honor the budget, alter the scope, should the equivalent work be considered to what would need to be done to honor the scope and alter the budget, which would again put us at a town meeting. So it seems to me that there is, I don't know, Carrie articulated that, and that would be sort of the option that would give more voice to the community to make that decision. So, again, that's sort of where I get in a conundrum. To me, we should be doing both. And certainly this isn't the place for that discussion. I'll have that discussion at the building committee level, but getting people's perspectives on even those, that's why I wanted perspectives on what our members think, so that we can know if we should be pursuing both. Lori, I saw your hand flutter.
Yeah, thanks. Just 2 points. One is, when we build operational budgets and we're closing gaps to finish, we always work as far away from the kids as possible. And I hope that would be our approach here. That'll be what I'm advocating for. So I want to be sure I say that to this committee. The second thing is the VE process, which you will not be directly involved in. However, there often are things that become deferred costs, and then this committee owns them. You've just fixed one at the high school that took 7 years after completion of the high school to pave that road. So I do think we have to be paying attention. And while this isn't the committee that, makes those decisions, it really is important that the committee knows what's going on and that the representatives you have, have all that factored in. Because this committee will own things that still have to get done, even if they're value engineered out, potentially, depending on what they are. So it just worth noting, I think, as this process goes forward, that ultimately some things are just deferred and not gone.
Tracy, I see your hand up, but you're muted.
Okay, so I have a comment and a question. So I do think that this is committee, because we've gotten more updates in, like, say, over the past 6 months from both you at Alexa and to kind of have a little bit of discussion about this. I do think that it is important to go, and I'm going to the building committee, and for me it is, let's look at all options. So some might be going back to the towns. Do think to advocate for us to really pursue both options if it comes down to that. Now, I don't know what your vote is going to be next week, if you're going to discuss that or whatever. Both sets of things to do is important. And then my question is, are there ARPA funds for the town available for any of this to offset?
I would defer to the superintendent for that question.
Select board.
Oh, I guess Matt's here. Matt, would you like to pop in? Are you actively listening?
Alexa, I wouldn't put anyone on the spot.
Okay.
There are ARPA funds. The select board and the town manager are going to be talking about that, have been talking about that. I think chair to chair, you could make that comment if you'd like.
Yeah, we have a process that we've already started where the town manager allocated the funds for this fiscal year because we didn't have a capital planning or annual budget process that incorporated them. But for FY23 and beyond, those funds will be rolled into our budget and capital planning process. So they will be part of our overall decision-making that we make for all of our investments.
Thanks, Matt. Cynthia, I see your hand up.
So I just have a scheduling question. So the 60% is the first week in October, right? Well, around there.
Yeah.
And so it seems like it's kind of on a collision course with town meeting. Like how would that work?
Well, that's sort of was what my point was. I'm wondering if there needs to be, and again, I'm just sort of bantering about here. I'm wondering if there need to be two concurrent processes here. One, like, do we plan in the event that we need to go back to town meeting to ask the voters what their feelings are about the budget and the scope? That sort of happens concurrently with the process of value engineering the building. That's been my sort of question all along. I should have asked it in the last meeting. I didn't, but yes, because you're right. I mean, I think there would need to be pieces of this puzzle put in place long before that October meeting for the building committee.
Right. And will it even work is my concern.
Well, I think provided that you do the necessary homework to prepare, I think it could.
So I would ask either the building committee and or the select board to do this work. And I think we need another school committee meeting where we have more information and then we can really sort of dig in and see how the educational plan fits in the framework of where, you know, either we're going to have a smaller problem or a bigger problem or the same problem, but we don't know. To your point, I think to think that it's going to go down is probably not a good bet. But I don't think we know. It's very volatile. So, you know, I just want to be sure the process is good. And to that point, I was wondering what kind of forums that the building committee was planning on having.
We were constrained a bit. We are not going to be able to put any of those plans in place till after our next meeting.
Sure, but you're probably going to do something. I sort of heard a whiff of that. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the important thing. The conversations happen with citizens and constituencies.
That will end up happening up
That's
earliest in August.
to me, as a school committee member, I need to hear from them, right?
Yeah.
It's not about what Cynthia wants. It's about what the community wants. And we've gotten one email with strong feelings, but yes.
Another one today, 2.
So, but I think we need to hear from a lot more people and provide them information in digestible format instead of say, try to read all this stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Even though it's not public comment, I'll allow you to talk, Matt, because you're adjacent to the project.
Well, also, it was just a point of information. You were talking about special town meeting. So if there is a special town meeting this coming year, it would be scheduled October 6th. However, it's not certain that the Public Works Department will have a need to hold a special town meeting. So at least according to what I heard from our town manager earlier this week. And that October 6th date is approximately when we would be receiving the next round of estimates.
Yep. So yeah, it may be trickier than we think, and we'd have to plan accordingly for that. Cynthia, did you still have your hand up or no? Okay, Carrie.
I tend to agree with Cynthia. Actually, I think we should wait to see what the document court said was coming about what the proposed cuts would be. It's hard to say where we are without that. Like what exactly are we talking about cutting? And then also looking at hopefully we'll have a little bit more information about the tax impact. Is that even something that we would have before October, or would we have to wait until October for that?
I mean, you have actually you mostly have the ability to do that math yourself.
Yeah, that's true. I can do that. It's not, because I have the $100 million math.
Yeah, I mean, so you can figure it out.
Any changes, if I might, Alexa, any changes, Carrie, that are forthcoming can be looked at in light of the data we already have. Today's worst case scenario, if I'm correct, is median household tax increase of 8% at peak, which would be fiscal 25. I think that was the latest data that seemed to be pretty black and white.
And then I think it would be helpful for me to see that document court that you were referencing. And then I would love to meet again to talk about like, I guess all of this, and specifically how the role, where the committee stands on whether or not we should be going for cuts, or whether we should be going for where the community is, what we're hearing from the community on
and I
think for more money.
And I think what we can do to that effect is we will likely have a meeting, I would think in mid-August, maybe even early August, second week. I know the superintendent is away in the entirety of the first week, so we can start to revisit looking at calendars for the 5 of us. Cord, I'm working on that doodle option. It's not going great, but so where we can look I'll get it done though.
Alexa, Erin can do a doodle for you.
Yeah,
You just
so,
need to
okay.
know what to put in.
Okay, then I'll talk to Erin about it. She's probably better at it than me. So anyway, so we can look at a date for us to meet probably in mid-August. I think, I just didn't want to go. I didn't want to have I didn't want the space between the two building committee meetings to go by without connecting with you all, bringing you up to speed and sort of start to get everyone's perspectives on the project so that Court and I could, best represent you guys. Oh, Tracy, sorry.
Sorry,
Okay.
just the communication from the, I think that will be helpful for the community. Once, because
We're losing a lot of,
building committee over the summer, but,
Jace, we've lost you.
oh, okay.
I know it's tough, Trace. Sorry. Well, so in any event, I appreciate everyone's perspectives. I think there's broad consensus that a meeting in between the next building committee meeting and our August 23rd meeting will likely be in order. So I can get to scheduling that. Oh, I see Court stand up.
yeah, just a sort of a general point. The building committee is where it is. And I think we've put it in front of our colleagues pretty clearly where we stand. I would hope that the building committee, I'm speaking to my colleagues on the building committee now for my school committee colleagues to hear. I would hope that we don't look at choices that are too binary at this point. I think we the town, we the building committee, we the school committee have to be as creative as we can. And so I'd rather open up options rather than try to simplify life by closing them down at this stage. Ultimately we will close down the choices and the options, but I would hope that we do that with as much care as we can. And I regret that we have this critical stuff happening in the summer, because we all know the pace is lousy in the summer. The ability to meet is lousy in the summer, but so be it, here we are. But anyway, more choices, not fewer at this point, I think would enable more creative problem solving for the school committee, the building committee, and most certainly the town generally.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tracy, do you want to
Yep,
try?
I'm gonna
again?
try again. I'm gonna try again. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I think it'll be important to get the communication piece out from the building committee that you talked about that last meeting, that, the building committee was going to go through and push things out to the community, because I do think it is important to inform the community of everything that's happening. It is a large scale project in the town that obviously has fiscal impact, but it also has huge educational impact for our kids. And, anyone that's walked into the middle schools kind of knows the state of affairs in there. So I do think that it is important for the voters to really understand what's happening. Thank you.
Okay. I think that if anyone, Cynthia's computer is restarting. I don't know if she's going to be able to come back, but hopefully she will. I can't determine if she's trying. I think everyone has gotten a good opportunity to voice their opinions based on the state of affairs here. So I think we can likely move on from our discussion. I'm happy to pivot to public comment if everyone is comfortable with that and feels like their voice has been heard today. Members,
Just
Carrie Court.
How should I put this? Alexa, if any of our colleagues have questions in the coming week or two, what would be our process? Would we send them to you and you would forward them to the chairs and the chairs would share them with the building committee, or just how would things go?
Yeah, I think probably the most streamlined way to do that is put all, the good news is I'm both the chair and a member of the building committee. And yeah, you can pop them right to me and I will get them to the best person, whether that's the superintendent, our chairs, or our paid professionals on the business, on the building committee, that's a no-brainer for me. Just you can push everything through to me.
Thank you.
Sure. Tracy, did you flutter hand?
Can you just, when you get the, yeah, I did. When you get the answers to those, like, I mean, I think it'd be helpful for committee members to get the questions and the answers. So can
Absolutely.
you put them together and just send them our way?
Yes.
Not for deliberation, but just for informational purposes?
Yes.
Thanks.
I think that's fine. Yes, 100%. I will do that. Cynthia, I don't know if I see your back. Yeah, you're back.
Sorry about that. It just went poof.
It happens. We're all experiencing technical difficulties today. Court brought up a great point, and then Tracy had an addendum to it that I think will be relevant. If we have any questions in the interim before our next meeting, all questions can go through me, which is just streamlined and easy. And then Tracy requested that, not for deliberative purposes, but any questions that are asked, that the answers to those questions are shared with the whole committee, so that questions are either not duplicative, and so everyone has sort of the same amount of robust information. So expect that, I guess, if anyone's got questions. Lori, is your hand up?
Two logistical pieces.
Sure.
FinCom has invited the chairs of the building committee to a meeting a week from today. In person, folks, because the state has not extended the remote option at the moment. It expires tomorrow, so we're all anxiously watching. So you're going to want to keep an eye on that and figure how that factors into the plans for your next meeting as well. Obviously, you can still zoom in to the finance committee, but they are meeting in person at the moment, given that delayed answer out of the state. Why they can't figure this out before the 12th hour every time is a little beyond me, but anyway, hopefully we get an answer soon.
It makes 350 towns are
waiting.
Keep us on our toes.
Indeed. It's not like everybody's not watching. That's right, Court.
All right. So, and then Cynthia, before you came back to, I just wanted to, before I turn it over to public comment, I just wanted to make sure that everyone felt like heard today, that no one had anything else that was on their mind to share before we turn it over. Court.
If I may, I just want to say hi to Bob.
Oh, yeah, you came on late. We did that already, Court.
Oh, okay. All right.
Hi, Court.
All right. Good to see you.
You got to be early bird, Court.
Yeah, apparently.
To get the congenial banter
Yeah.
that comes before 3:30.
It is his
Uh,
first formal meeting, though. That is correct.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
perhaps the last Zoom, I guess.
Um,
But thank you, Alexa and Court, for all. I know there's been many hours put into this, so we greatly appreciate it. And this has been very helpful to me, so I appreciate everyone's time.
Yeah,
today.
it's tricky, no doubt. And so, yeah, I think it's just important that we all stay.
And Dr. Hunter too, sorry. Your many hours too.
All right, well, if we've concluded our discussion piece, I think we're probably, I had put an action item on the agenda in the event that we were looking to, have a formal recommendation that was open-ended. I didn't expect necessarily to do it, but in the event that we went there, again, I think what's more important is that Court and I sort of understand your perspectives, and more so than creating something formal out of our committee. So that concludes our discussion piece, and I see our first hand up for public comment. I'll call on Wilson Kerr.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
You can.
So first of all, thank you guys very much for all of the work that's happened regarding the middle school. For those of us at the town meeting, it was not just a vote for a number. It was a vote for a vision. It was a vote for 2 years of process that included a lot of concessions and cuts to get to that number. Regarding the overrun, the rate of inflation was 9.1% in June. That is a 40-year high. everything is more expensive. Anyone doing a project, anyone buying a car, anyone doing a remodel on their home knows this. This vote occurred in January, and then the subsequent town meeting vote occurred in February. That vote was 2,100 to 400 roughly. That's an 80% margin. So, you guys are in the weeds. I know there's committees and processes, but, listening to this meeting, I would concur with the notion of honoring the constituents. I think the court said it really well. More options, not less. But one of those options cannot be that we get jammed at the 60% number, and then suddenly there's no time to organize taking this back to the voters. This was not close. When we heard Lori Hunter present the vision for the school, what I heard was not a vote for a number. It was a vote for a vision. It was a vote for 2 years of hard work that involved give and take on all sides. So just a couple comments and really a reminder. I think also court said, hey, I didn't expect this to be, on budget. We expected this to be over. Honor that and make sure there's a choice. Cutting the scope to fit the budget is not what people voted for. Obviously, there's a number associated with everything, just like there's a number associated with trying to buy a car in February of last year and trying to buy a car now. Dealers are adding $10,000 just for that. So anyway, just some comments and a huge thank you to the process and to Alexa. I could hear, listening to this meeting. It's sort of hard to follow it all, but I would concur with your notion of making sure that there are 2 options or as many options as possible. But if one of those is a special meeting, if one of those is taking this back to the voters, I hope that will be prepared for and we don't run into some kind of jam up situation where that's not possible. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Wilson. Do we have anyone else looking to make public comment? I'm looking for the little hand icon out there. Going once, going twice, and I think we're done. I appreciate. Oh, sorry.
It's Joel Gagne,
Oh,
31 Central
hi.
Street.
Hi, Joel.
Hi, I'm sorry, I got lost. The connection got lost while I was driving.
That's okay.
I'll be quick. I just want to echo what Wilson said. I believe the taxpayers at the end of the day have to have a say in this. That the taxpayers voted for this project, and they didn't vote for a budget number. They voted for this project. I was at town meeting. Only one person got up and spoke about the cost, and it was an 18-year-old senior from CCYH. They voted for the project, and any changes to this project, any reductions, it goes against what the people of this community voted for overwhelmingly at both town meeting and at the ballot box. So we got to leave it up to the taxpayers to decide. I do strongly believe that we have to go back to the taxpayers and ask them, are you still willing to fund this? This does happen. In Cambridge, it just happened. They were $50 million over, and they went back to the taxpayers and they approved it. So this is what democracy is all about. I really hope that this committee will honor what the hard work that the building committee has done over the last 2 years and keep the project intact. I can't say that strongly enough. They have to have a say in this. Anything less is really dishonoring the vote that took place earlier this year. Thank you so much, Alexa. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Joel. All right. Any other public comment? I'm looking for little hands. I'll go again, going once, going twice. Third time's a charm. All right. Well, again, thank you to my colleagues. It's a beautiful summer day and we are all on Zoom. So I know that is, significant. I appreciate you guys all being super flexible. We will likely buckle up, have a meeting in mid-August on this same topic. So get your calendars ready shortly. And again, I just really appreciate you all. And with that, I will make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second,
Thank you, guys. Roll call to get out of here. Anderson, aye.
Booth, aye.
Morano, I.
Rainey, aye.
Frank and I.
Thank
right.
you guys all so much and welcome, Bob, once
Yes,
again.
welcome, Bob.
Thanks, everybody.